and welcome to another episode of my podcast, The Hayley Osborne Show. I am so glad that you are here today with me in your ears after a week off, where that was last week, where I was unwell with a cold and a very, very blocked sinus area. And that's just not what you want in your ears. And so I decided to have a week off. And bear with me, I'm still kind of like not quite better, but I am better, if that makes sense. So I took a week off and it was needed. It was much needed. So not off from the business, just off from the podcast, which, it's fine. Here we are again with me in your ears for another week. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and it's something that I'm hot on and strong on in building brands in and around, is storytelling, because I think that that fundamentally is the thing that is going to grow your business, not a sales pitch. Okay, so I wanted to come to you today with my hot take on storytelling because, yes, I've spoken about storytelling before, and I think it's just a nice refresher and reminder to everyone that listens to this podcast that it's going to be the story that people can relate to that are eventually going to buy from you. Okay, whether it's, immediately, which it's probably not, but your consistency through storytelling and through showing up. And, I'm not saying bare your soul, but I'm saying go deep in your story and why you do what you do and how you help people, and mostly the benefits that you solve. So your transformation that you provide. When you go deep into that story, more and more people can relate to you. Okay, over and above what a sales pitch looks like. And that does require strategy. You do need to lean in, do the work, think about what you are going to talk about before you actually do. Okay, so a great way to be able to storytell is through longer form content, right? Which is things like this podcast, which I think has been the best thing that I've actually ever created inside of my business. And second to that is a blog, okay? Because these things have life and have longevity and sit in lots of different places. Okay. So my podcast, for example, sits on Spotify, it sits on Apple, it sits in my blog, it sits on YouTube, it sits everywhere. And the blog then creates my weekly emails, which sits in your inbox, and like it cascades down from there. Okay. As opposed to a social media post standalone, in and out, 5 minutes of life and gone. Okay. So I want to give you today my hot take on storytelling, okay? To be able to build your business for the long haul. And, I think we have all been there constantly trying to sell, but storytelling is actually the more powerful way to be able to market your business. And when you get it right, this is what connects you to your audience so much better. And it makes you an inspiration, okay? And when you become that, your audience take action. So, I've got 8 things I wanted to talk about today to build a story, not a sales pitch. And I think that you are, when you start to tell stories instead of pushing a hard sell, I think that's the turning point where you start to see your marketing take off. And I know a lot of you in my world are doing that and you're seeing beautiful results, and that's awesome. But if you're not, it's time to get storytelling. Okay. So I think the first part, well, number one, is to start with something that is relatable, a problem that is relatable. So I think every great story starts with a problem. Think of like your favorite books, your movies, they all begin with some sort of challenge, some sort of conflict that someone has to overcome. Marketing isn't very different. Okay. So when you can market your business with a story, you can begin highlighting a problem that your target audience can relate to. So, I've talked about a lot your transformation message. So that is the thing that people see when they first land on you anywhere and your business. So the problem that they will see you fixing is in that message. So we talk about who is the audience that you serve, what is the problem that you solve, and what is the transformation that you provide. Okay. And that's the relatable problem. So if you've nailed that, I kind of like to think of how I go about marketing is like I talk about all of the building blocks and how it all interconnects and how it all can help you to, rise above and get to that next level and keep on building that brand that you're trying to build, to create more momentum, to build that know, like, and trust so more people get to know you, they like you, they trust you, they buy from you. So I think that instead of jumping straight into your product or service, which I think is a bit more of panic posting, start by showing that you understand pain points. Okay, so the problems that you solve. And I think that's the first part in creating a meaningful connection with someone, because at the end of the day, whatever kind of marketing that you're doing, wherever you're showing up, there is only one person at the end of that reading what it is that you have to say. I know that you've probably got thousands of people in your database, a good cross section of thousands of people from all the social media platforms that you have. But essentially, if you're on your stories, if you're appearing in someone's feed, it's one person reading your content. Okay, so when you can start showing that you understand what their problems are and what their pain points are, I think that connection starts to build. So let's say I'm going to leave that till after, actually. Bear with me. I have a method. Okay, so the second part is to introduce yourself, okay? Obviously, as the hero that solves the problem. So that's in the transformation. So, you've obviously got in your transformation message, you've got your audience, so who it is that you help, the problem that you solve, and the transformation that you provide. You are the hero in all of this, okay? You're the one that can solve the problem. So the hero saves the day, right? In every superhero story, because, I always refer back to being a superhero. Owning a business is just like being a superhero. Being a mum is like being a superhero. I feel like I wear all the hats, but the hero saves the day, right? The mum saves the day. Dad saves the day too, but the mum saves the day. And then, and then, your business saves the day. So you're the hero, right? So in marketing your story, your product or service is the hero. Okay. So it's important to show how that fits into the story. So never, never, never just a list of features. People don't care about that. People don't care that you could take, here's a 50-page book on X, Y, and Z. No one cares about that. They care about what benefits are in it for them. We are all selfish humans that want to know how it can impact our lives and benefit us. So we don't care about the features, we just care about the benefits. So instead of bombarding your audience with a sales pitch, think about how your service or your product helps your customer. So it helps the hero solve the problem. Okay, so how do you introduce that rather than just saying, this is what I offer? Okay, you could say something like, after weeks of frustration, she found the solution she was looking for when she discovered uh, our time management program. It helped her start to save more time and make more progress in her goals, something like that. Something around time hacking, I don't know. But do you see the kind of linear progression of how we're talking about the benefits, not just the features? And I think that it makes your product or service feel like that is the thing to unlocking somebody's success rather than just listing features. Okay. The third one I want to talk about is make it about your customer, don't make it about you. So I think this is where lots of businesses get it wrong. And I see this heaps on social media where everything is about that person rather than about the customer. And when you're using storytelling as a way to market, there is definitely an art to this. It is not the easiest thing to do. Even when you are writing your about section on your website, I feel like that is one of the hardest things that I've found that the businesses that I work with struggle to write, because what it needs to be is actually about your customer, not about you. It is about you, but it's more about what you can do for your customer. Okay, so nobody cares if I've got a marketing degree. It's nice to have, but probably not necessary. Has it impacted the way that I run my business right now in 2025? No. I got my marketing degree in I don't know, 2009. Let's just paint that picture, guys. There was no social media. There was no, there was Facebook, but there was no Facebook for brand pages. Instagram started in 2000. I actually may have got it in 2008. See, I don't even remember. But yeah, I have a marketing degree, but it is squat with what I do today. So it's just consistency and time in the game and constantly learning and building your knowledge and upskilling and anything new that comes out. Obviously, this is something that I care deeply about. I really have an interest in learning all of the new things on how to help you to build your business. So back then, there was no social media. People didn't really use the internet as much as what they do now. Like, I'm not even that old. And it makes me, it's just very funny to actually say that out loud. So life is different now. And so I think that, it's not just about you. So anyway, I have definitely digressed there, but it was a nice little segue on maybe something that you didn't know about me. But here we are. I think that you don't need to tell your life story. You don't need to boast about how great you are, because no one cares about that. Instead, I think you need to focus on the transformation that you can give your customers, okay, and what kind of experience they can have, and have that on your about page, have that, cascaded through your website, have that as social media posts, as blog posts. If you have a podcast, great. Okay. So use that as opposed to things about yourself. Highlight your customer's journey, before, during, and after working with you, buying from you. What does that look like? Let them be the heroes in your story and your storytelling, and show how what it is that you sell helps them overcome what it is that they're struggling with. I think that's really important. So, not you, unfortunately. It has to be very well crafted to be the other way around. And I see it a lot. People just slip into selling because they don't have a strategy, because they don't have a story on how they're going to show up in their business. We need to get more and more clever. Okay, especially with the rise of AI, everyone's sounding like everybody else. It's becoming boring, whereas no one can ever be you. So you need to sit down and have a think about what that looks like to be you. What lights you up? And when you start leaning into that more and more, the rest will follow. Trust me. You be consistent, you show up, you be more you, and the rest will follow. I'm not saying bare your soul by any form at all. I don't share my kids on my social media. I still tell stories, not about them, but I'm still a great storyteller, right? So I don't make it a secret that I have children, but I don't share them at all. So I think it's definitely all in your strategy. And, I think your audience don't care about how amazing your business is or how long you've been in business. They care about how it impacts them and what is in it for them. Okay, the fourth one I want to talk about is emotion. Okay, so how emotion can drive engagement and connection. So we all know that a powerful story tugs at the heartstrings. We all know that. We've all, teared up in awesome movies that have been beautiful at storytelling, but we know that emotions are what makes a story really memorable. And I don't mean like, being all sad sack or whatever. I know everyone loves a great triumph story, but it doesn't have to be like that. Okay, you just have to get really creative. If you can connect with your audience in some way, shape, or form emotionally, they are more likely to trust you. They are more likely to relate to you and ultimately take action. Okay, the next one is 5, conflict and resolution. All right, so great stories have conflict, and your story should be no different to how you are marketing your business. You obviously, are solving a problem, whether it be through your service or through your product. And so it's important that you show your audience what they are struggling with, what they're facing, and introduce your product or your service as the resolution. Okay, so that's kind of like the conflict and resolution, but you need to create that through your storytelling. And there is definitely an art to doing that. The 6th one I want to talk about is building a strong brand voice. Okay, so you play a huge role in guiding your audience on your brand and I guess the plot twist when you market your business through storytelling. I think your brand voice serves as the narrator, as the person that tells the story. Okay, so when I see it go wrong is usually if you have it doesn't matter if you have a personal brand or you don't. If you're the one that is behind your business, you're a small business. Usually, if your business has stayed a bit stagnant, but you have grown and you've constantly built your knowledge, you've educated yourself and you've upskilled a lot, but your business, you haven't updated your strategy and you've kind of stayed the same, then you will become so far removed from that business, your brand voice, and you will be disconnected and you'll find it really hard to show up because you no longer align with what your brand stands for. Okay, so building a strong brand voice requires for you to keep going back in and, upgrading that narrative in and around yourself. I think it's really important. The seventh one is using real customer testimonials. And I know I say this a lot, but one of the most powerful ways to say you're amazing is like someone else saying it for you. There is no other way. So get the testimonials. I've got a script that I take my members in superhero marketing through so they can ask really intentional questions when they get testimonials from their clients. Okay, so, these are your real life superheroes. These are the heroes in your story. You're great, don't get me wrong, but there is nothing like someone saying you're amazing, okay, to build your brand and your street cred. Okay, the eighth one is leaving room for imagination. Okay, so the best stories of all time leave something to the imagination. So when telling your story, don't give everything away in one go. Don't lay all your cards on the table because then why would people need to buy from you if you've told them everything? Okay? So let your audience fill in the gaps and leave a little mystery, leave a little intrigue, and encourage your audience to follow along for the story. Encourage cliffhangers and really strong calls to action to click through to your website. Okay, leave room for imagination to keep them wanting more. Okay, so when you have that strength, okay, and you've built that trust, then it leads to sales. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today. My hot take on storytelling, okay, to build your business, not a sales pitch. Okay, there were 8 points there. Go through if you need to. Again, the show notes will be over on my website if you wanted to go back and jot them down. Hopefully, you are multitasking listening to this podcast by walking or whether you are driving somewhere, you're in the car. I love a good multitask. So, it's a nice way to quickly upskill and, stay with your finger on the pulse. I hope you have a great week, guys, and I will see you next week for another episode of the Hayley Osborne Show.